The Synergy DE data provider for .NET offers an exciting new way to access your Synergy databases from within the .NET framework. Our data provider for .NET is part of Synergy's Connectivity series and provides out-of-the-box compatibility with Microsoft's Entity Framework. The Synergy DE data provider for .NET includes all of the functionality of the data provider for ODBC, which it wraps, but also enables entity data models, link to entities, and Entity SQL. This means that developers can create visual representations of Synergy data in a .NET environment, giving them at-a-glance knowledge of field names, data types, and the relationships between data files. The Synergy DE data provider for .NET and entity data modeling can significantly speed up the process of modular deployment to a new UI. Reports and informational displays can be handled by a .NET developer, while Synergy developers can concentrate on the business logic used to update data and handle other business processes. Combining the Synergy DE data provider for .NET with XF Server Plus provides a feature-rich set of tools for adapting your application into new markets and environments quickly and efficiently. The minimum requirements to develop entity models are Visual Studio 2008, the .NET Framework 3.5, Synergy 915B, and Connectivity series. Of course, you'll also need Windows and the Synergy DE data provider itself, which is available for download in the Synergy DE Resource Center. Let's open a Visual Studio project and see how we can begin using the .NET data provider to drive a Windows-based application. We'll use the ChronoTrack data that was used at the 2009 Success Partners Conference as the basis for the new program. The idea is to use a drop-down list to allow selection of any ChronoTrack user and then automatically display their contact information. If the user happens to be a consultant, we'll also display a listing of all projects assigned to them as well. Here we've set up the elements of our user interface in a Windows form, but that's it. When run, the application doesn't actually do anything. Let's drop in an entity data model and then use it to bind data to the form's controls. First, we'll need to bring up the Server Explorer tab and add a data connection. The data source name we'll select was set up during the process of enabling XFODBC, so we just need to type in our login information. Click Test and verify the connection, and we're ready to go. Now let's add a data model. Bringing up the context menu for the project, we select Add, New Item, then click on Data to see the different data items available, and pick the ADO.NET Entity Data Model. Since we've already added a data connection to our solution, we're just going to select it from the list. For expediency, let's include the user ID and password with the connection string, and for the connection itself, let's call it Demo Entities. The wizard retrieves the information from the database, and now we can start selecting which tables we'll include. Though we can select any number of tables, for this demonstration, let's just go ahead and grab everything. The result is a visual representation of all the tables in the ChronoTrack data structure. We can see field names, data types, and even the relationships between the primary keys. It's here that we could also remove unnecessary fields from our model, define new relationships, or even add custom fields or properties. Let's switch to our main form and start using the model. Dropping into the code, we'll declare a few class variables, one to access our data model, and another to store the currently displayed user information. Going back to the design view and looking at the form's current layout, the first thing we'll do is bind the collection of ChronoTrack users to the drop-down list. We can accomplish this with just a few lines of code. First, we double-click the form to automatically bring up the load event. Then all we need to do is instantiate the entity data model we previously declared and set the drop-down list data source equal to the model's ChronoTrack user object. And finally, set the display member of the drop-down list to the user ID. And that should be it. If we run the program now, we should see a populated drop-down list showing all of the users currently registered on the system. Of course, no other data is being displayed and nothing happens when we select a different user, so let's fix that now. Double-clicking the drop-down list brings up the selected index changed event. First, let's grab the user object, or user record if you prefer, that has been selected from the list. Now we can start populating our text boxes with the correct data. This includes the user's street address, city, state, and zip. Next, we want to disable the previous or next buttons if we happen to be viewing the first or last user in the list, respectively. And finally, if the selected user is not a consultant, we'll hide the data grid view that's used to show project information. However, if a consultant is selected, we'll need to query our entity model for all projects associated with that consultant. We'll store the resulting list of projects in a new iQueryable object. We'll call it project list and create it from all P for projects, where the project lead consultant is the same as the selected user. Now we'll set the data grid view's data source to the resulting list of projects and make sure that the data grid view is visible to the user. We're almost done, but let's make sure the next and previous buttons on the form also work. One line of code, which simply changes the selected index of our drop-down list, is all that's required for each. Last, since we're playing with a data connection, let's make sure we dispose the entity completely when the form closes, just to be on the safe side. We'll add a form closing event to explicitly handle the cleanup and dispose of our demo entity. There. We should have everything that's needed for a rudimentary user review screen. Running the project, we can verify that information is populating correctly, the next and previous buttons are in working order, and selecting a consultant from the drop-down list shows and populates our grid with information. There's a little too much data showing up in the grid, however. Let's pare it down a bit by changing a few of the characteristics of the grid itself. First, we'll tell the grid what kind of data it should be expecting. We can add a data source here that will give it all the information it needs by selecting our project object from the data model. We can then edit the columns and make sure that only the information we want to display is actually selected. A few more modifications to general properties of the grid, like auto-sizing the rows to fill the grid, and maybe telling it to select entire rows at once rather than just the cell that was clicked, and we should have a data display that's a little more user-friendly and pertinent. As you can see, the Synergy DE data provider for .NET provides a powerful tool for your .NET developers. By ensuring that your repository is up to date and the files, keys, and relationships are properly defined, you can accomplish a great deal of development on the .NET side without writing a single line of Synergy code. Keep in mind, however, that the Synergy DE data provider for .NET sits on top of the ODBC provider. So just as with all Connectivity Series products, it's highly recommended that you not use the data providers to make updates or changes to your Synergy databases. XF Server Plus is the best and easiest method for accomplishing such tasks. Also, make sure that you consult the XF ODBC User's Guide in the online manuals. Pay special attention to the recommended Microsoft hotfixes, which will ensure Visual Studio's Entity Framework implementation works correctly. Everything else you'll need, from setting up your repository to repairing a system catalog to primary key requirements and examples, can be found in the documentation as well. Information on the Entity Framework, linked to entities and Entity SQL, can be found all over the internet, so don't restrict yourself to what's published on Microsoft's official sites. Excellent and better developer resources can be found in blogs, example code, and online tutorials. For more information on obtaining Connectivity Series, contact your Synergy DE account manager or call 916-635-7300.